Good morning. I would like to call this June 20th, 2018 meeting of the Planning and Advisory Commission to order. If you'll please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And before we get started, since this is televised live and it is important that we're able to hear folks on the mic, I'm going to ask that you really make sure your phones are off or silent so we don't have them ringing in the gallery as we have people speaking. I also want to remind you in the audience and those who are watching on television that this is the first hearing of any rezoning, text change, or special exception request brought before us today. We will first hear a reading of the staff report for the case by the planning staff and ask the applicant to provide a brief overview of the request. We will then give the opportunity for anyone in the audience to speak for or against the request or to inquire about the said request. The commissioners will have any needed discussion on the case, and once a motion is made and seconded by the commission, a vote will be placed and recommendation will be rendered. The case will go back to the planning department for their independent recommendation. If a favorable recommendation is given, then the case is forwarded to the City Council with 2 independent recommendations. If the Planning Department makes a recommendation for denial, the applicant will have 10 days from the receipt of a letter stating the denial to notify the Clerk of Council that they are requesting to be placed on the City Council's agenda. The City Council of Columbus will hold a public meeting called the first reading. The said council shall consider the case, review PAC and Planning Department recommendations, and hear discussion on the matter. Council will make final decision at a second public meeting called the second reading. Commissioners, we were given minutes earlier in the week, and we can submit these as accepted unless any of you have any corrections or additions, changes that need to be made. And I see none, so we will submit those as accepted. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and get into our first case. We have brought before us REZN-05-18-0956, and this is a request to rezone 0.21 acres of land located at 4603 17th Avenue. The current zoning is SFR3, which is Single Family Residential 3. The proposed zoning is GC, which is General Commercial. The proposed use is a parking lot expansion. Gene Ross is the applicant, and this property is located in Council District 8, Garrett. Mr. Renfro, if you'll read the staff report for us, please.
Yes, ma'am. General land use is inconsistent in planning area F. Current land use designation is single-family residential. Future land use designation is single-family. It is compatible with existing land uses. Environmental impacts, the property does not lie within the floodway and flood area. The developer will need to improve drainage plan prior to issuance of a site development permit if a permit is required. Property is served by all city services. There's no traffic impact. The site shall meet the codes and regulations of the Columbus Consolidated Government for commercial usage. No school impact. The site shall include a Category C buffer along the property line bordered by SFR3 zoning district. The 3 options under Category C are 20 feet with a certain amount of canopy trees under the understory trees, shrubs, ornamental grasses per 100 linear feet, 10 feet with a certain amount of shrubs, ornamental grasses per 100 linear feet, and a wood fence or masonry wall, 30 feet undisturbed natural buffer. No response from Fort Benning recommendation, no response from DRI recommendation. 47 property owners within 300 feet of the subject's property were notified of the rezoning request. The planning department received one call opposing, and there's no additional information.
Okay, and so the one call opposing, any specific reason to that?
Their comment was they were just concerned about how far back off of Manchester they were going to allow to get into the neighborhood.
Gotcha. Okay. Commissioners, are there any questions regarding the staff report? And I see none. So if the applicant is here, is the applicant here? If you'll come forward, please, and state your name and address, and then just give us a brief overview, that would be great.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jean Ross. The address that we want to rezone?
Or that's fine, yes.
Okay, the address we want to rezone is 4603 17th Avenue.
Okay. And do you have anything additionally that you'd like to add to what we heard in the staff report?
No, that was complete, John.
Okay. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant?
Well,
Mr. Kenner.
I just have a comment. When I went down there and looked at that neighborhood, those people are under stress right now. They're probably struggling as it is, and I'm just concerned that if you make that general commercial one a lot back, like somebody called in on, that it's just going to put more stress on that neighborhood. I mean, those people are just making it now. Okay?
All right. Any
What
response?
stress would that put on the neighborhood?
That's a residential neighborhood. It's just a progression of general commercial back into the street. And these people are very modest in income already, and just having additional commercial properties right next to them and getting farther back in their street could be detrimental to that neighborhood.
Yes, sir. We wouldn't want anything detrimental. And it was commercial for over 11 years already where we were, and the commercial across the street from where we were as well.
Okay. Mr. Reese?
Just a question of clarity. So this is for a parking lot extension, and that's correct?
It is to our office on 4521
Just for your
17th
office?
Avenue.
And I guess once we rezone it, if you ever sold it, then someone could pursue commercial usage without permission, I think, which is really the crux of your concern. Was there any other way we can resolve this by allowing them to have a parking lot usage without changing the actual zoning? Like, can we give a special exception or something of that nature?
We wouldn't be able to do a special exception. We could condition the general commercial usage.
If we condition it, Mr. Commissioner Kenner, would that kind of resolve your concern right now of further commercial development into the community? I mean, I want them to be able to use it for what they want to use it for, but for the parking lot purpose. But the general commercial zoning altogether is a slight concern for me too. I have to be honest about that, because that would be extended it into the community.
Okay, so we could put that condition on it, that it would be for parking only?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, can I ask you a question, John?
Sure.
Because when I put
Could you
in the
do me a favor and just come into the mic a little
Yes.
bit? Yeah, I'm
Can I
sorry.
ask you a question, John? Because the original rezoning said that for parking and for extension of our building. And the parking is to help with our patient care,
Okay.
to better the needs of our patients. So we do plan to extend the building as well into that parking area.
Okay.
Okay, well, that kind of changes.
So it would
the
need
conversation.
it would need
Changes
to, it would need to be
drastically.
commercial.
Okay.
Well, thank you for your honesty on that.
Well, that's what the
Clarity.
rezoning said when I turned it in.
Yeah.
It said with the intention to build onto the building.
Can you repeat that for Commissioner Kenner? He wasn't,
Yes, the rezoning that I submitted said to build a parking lot in that area with the intention to expand our building. The parking lot is to better our patient needs, and to extend our building is to better our patient needs. And we own both of those properties.
okay? Any other questions?
I have a question for staff. Is it not the case that a few months ago we approved a similar extension right across the street on the east side of that
Correct.
street?
You did. It went 20 feet into the adjacent properties owners.
Okay. And for the same basic purpose, allowing one business to expand by a little bit?
Right, that's right. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And it was on commercial?
It was.
It's actually almost an identical case. Yeah.
Okay.
Right across the street from it, yes. So, any other questions, commissioners? Do I hear a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this request? If so, please come forward. Anyone in the audience who is willing to, would like to speak against it? And there is no one. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you for coming forward. And do I hear a motion?
I'll make a
Mr.
motion.
King?
Case of REZN 05180956, request to rezone .21 acres of land located at 4603 17th Avenue. I make a motion that we accept this due to the fact it's compatible with existing land uses and all city services. And I don't know, do we want to put a special exception on there for the expansion of the building and the parking lot? Okay.
Is that a yes? Is that what somebody said?
Well, that motion was complicated with a question.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'll make the motion that gives it, that allows them to expand their business and also allows them to expand their parking lot. So I'll make the motion with that special exception in the motion.
To condition that piece of property for those two
Condition it,
uses only.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me just write a note down. Okay, do I hear a second? Okay. Yes, sir.
How do we deal with this? Because what happens if some of us want the condition and some of us don't want the condition? Do we first vote on the motion to condition, and then if it's rejected, then we vote on a motion without condition?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So to be clear for the commissioners, the motion that's being brought forward is being brought forward to approve this, but with the condition.
Well, I'll drop the condition. I mean, it's neither here nor there. I feel like the Rosses will do what they're supposed to do.
And I don't vote in this, but I do want to remind you guys that you did approve this year, or recently, almost an identical case like this across the street.
Yeah,
So I'm struggling, I will tell you, I'm struggling
All right,
with
let
there
me
being
just
conflict.
revise my motion.
But before you do that, I just want to go on the record saying that I think the condition would be hard to manage anyway.
I do too.
And out of fairness, if we've already done this in that area, I think we just, if
We
you
just-
can make, I'm requesting you make your motion as is, the same way they're presenting, with no condition.
Okay, well, let's just present it with no conditions.
Okay.
Point of order.
And that's my motion.
You're going to have to rescind the motion.
Yeah,
first.
we've
Okay,
got
let me rescind my motion,
he'll
and I'll
have-
restate the motion.
Okay, let's start all over.
REZN 05180956, request to rezone .21 acres, located at 4603 17th Avenue. I make a motion, we accept this case as written, due to the fact it's compatible with all land uses and it has all city services.
And I hear a second.
I second it.
All of those in favor, please raise your right hand. And it is unanimous, so this will be submitted as approved.
Thank you all
Madam Chair,
very
just a point
much.
of order.
Yes.
The second needs to accept the motion being
I accept.
withdrawn.
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
accept the motion.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Greenblatt. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this brings us to our next case, REZN-05-18-0957. And this is a request to rezone 88.82 acres of land located at 6801 Flat Rock Road. The current zoning is LMI, which is light manufacturing industrial, and SFR 3, which is single-family residential 3. The proposed zoning is PMUD, which is the planned mixed-use development. The proposed use is a mixed-use, lodging, residential, assisted living, and retail. George Mize is the applicant, and the property is located in Council District 6, Allen. Mr. Renfro.
Yes, ma'am. The general land use is consistent with Planning Area B. It's currently vacant. The future land use designation is mixed use. It is compatible with the existing land uses. The property does not lie within the floodway and floodplain area. The developer will need an improved drainage plan prior to an issuance of site development permit if a permit is required. Property is served by all city services. Traffic impact. A traffic study was conducted by the applicant, reviewed by traffic consultants hired by CCG. The site shall meet the codes and regulations of the Columbus Consolidated Government for commercial usage. There was no school impact. Buffer requirement is established per the bubble plan that was included. No recommendation from Fort Benning, DRI. The project will not have a negative impact on the surrounding jurisdiction. 600 property owners within a half a mile, and I'd just like to note that normally we only send these out 300 feet from the property. Of the subject property were notified of the rezoning request. The planning department received no calls and emails regarding the rezoning. The developers, additional notes, the developers held a public meeting on June 7, 2018. 106 people attended this event from the surrounding area. Citizens were most concerned with additional traffic of the new how the new development would generate. Conditions are necessary for the rezoning. Excuse me. Phase 1 property development shall not exceed 400,000 square feet. All interior roads shall be completed prior to issuance of a CO. Telcoa's Lake between the proposed development and Gateway Road shall be completed prior to the issuance of a CO. All proposed improvements at the intersection of Flat Rock Road and J.R. Allen shall be completed prior to a CO. All proposed driveways shall be approved by GDOT and the developer. All decel lanes shall be approved by GDOT and completed by the developer prior to a CO. And then Phase 2, property development shall not exceed 300,000 square feet. The Manchester Expressway westbound off-ramp at J.R. Allen Parkway Excel Lane shall be converted to a full lane that extends at the driveway of the immediate development to the west, 6707 Flat Rock Court, as approved by GDOT and be completed by the developer. And a third lane to Gateway Road from Flat Rock shall be approved by GDOT and funded by the developer on a value-based estimate. The overall development shall not exceed 1.1 million total square feet. The proposed buffer, as delineated on the attached bubble plan, shall be adopted as the designated buffer.
Commissioners, any questions regarding the staff report?
Yes. You read a list of traffic improvements that will need to be addressed or made. Is it staff's view that once those improvements are made, any traffic concerns should be alleviated?
I wouldn't say completely alleviated, but it will help in that area. But the developers should be able to answer those questions better than I would.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the staff report? And so the applicant has come forward. If you'll state your name and address and give us a brief overview, you know the drill.
Okay, I do. Y'all bear with me, this is my first PowerPoint presentation.
Sure.
My name is George Mize. I'm with the law firm of Page Cranham. I'm representing your applicant today. Well, they say it's me, but the actual developer of the project is JMC Flat Rock Partners. It's a company owned by local developers, Jack Wright, Marty Flanoy, and Chris Whiteman. These guys have been in the Columbus area for many years, and they've done numerous projects, and they've been longtime residents of Columbus. They've been in this community a long time, and they'll be in this community long after this development is done. They have a genuine interest in the welfare of the people of Columbus and its citizens, and they have a heart for and a real track record of promoting mom and pop businesses, and all of them here with me today, Jack, Marty, and Chris. The primary engineer on the project is Mass Engineering Consultants out of Atlanta, Georgia. They service clients all across the United States. It's a civil engineering firm. The principals have over 60 years of combined experience, and they specialize in larger projects. That's projects in excess of 50 acres, and currently have active projects in 33 of the 50 states. And here with me on behalf of Mass Engineering is Nick Salko.
Hi.
Also with us today is our traffic engineer, who I'm sure y'all have questions for. It's Abdul Amir with A&R Engineering out of Marietta. And of course, Abdul has decades of experience. He's worked with dozens of cities throughout the region and throughout this state, including Columbus. The first slide we have here is just a proposed master site plan, just giving you guys an idea of what we're going to do, but we're seeking to actually downzone this property. For about 89 acres is the old Swift Mill textile site, and it's right off Gateway Road. I'm sure y'all are familiar with it. But right now it's a combination of LMI, which you can see constitutes a substantial part of the property, which is, I was going to look down, there you go, which constitutes a substantial part of the property, and then a small, on the very northern tip, there's about 2.3 acres, it's FFR1. And as Kathleen said a minute ago, we're seeking to rezone this planned mixed-use development. I had to say that several times, but it's much easier just to remember it as PMUD. The proposed development, as the staff report indicates, the proposed development is certainly consistent and compatible with surrounding land uses. The next several slides will show you what the surrounding land uses are. This first slide is a picture really of the Walmart Gateway development just to the southwest of the subject property, together with its 8 out parcels, which are a car wash, gas station, IHOP, a retail strip center, etc. Also to the northeast, the east and southeast of the property, we have general commercial development. This first one is, of course, a picture of the Tractor Supply development, the Goodwill retail store. You've got a McDonald's and a gas station. That's across to the north and east, and to the southeast and east, you've got what I call the Kitten Lake development. As you can see in the foreground there, you've got a Chick-fil-A, you've also got a Zaxby's, you've got other retailers and other restaurants, and directly across the street, you've got additional general commercial development. You can see in the foreground there, the auto zone, and well in the back, you've got substantial multifamily. Also, the comprehensive plan calls for this subject property to be zoned mixed use, which is precisely what we're seeking to do today. This next slide is what's called a bubble plan. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what my client proposes to do is to develop a high-end mixed-use development to be known as Midland Commons. And the bubble plan kind of takes the property and breaks it down into segments as to what the current plans are as to how the development is supposed to go. And we'll just quickly go through those. But to the left, in the light blue, is a mixed-use retail lot, which is 19 acres. And moving to the right, in the green's about 22 acres, that's going to be the mixed-use lot, and we're calling this the Lifestyle Center, and this is kind of the plum here. This is what the developer is most excited about. But it gives the residents the opportunity to live, work, and play at the same place. To the right of that in yellow is the assisted living lots, about 13.5 acres. It's certainly a much-needed use as our population continues to age, and what they're planning on doing is phasing in these senior units with a total of about 200 units at the end of the development. In the darker blue, that's a retail and restaurant outlets, about 13 acres. To the right of that in pink is the grocery anchor and retail lot of about 15 acres, and to the right of that in light gray is what we're calling the park parcel. That's about 2.3 acres, and the plans for that is to donate it to the city to become part of the Rails to Trails. Although I'm not at liberty to, as you would know, to identify any of the tenants that we're talking to as far as to locate in Midland Commons, I will tell you that we've had numerous good and fruitful conversations with numbers of retailers, including local, regional, and national restaurants, national retailers, clothing retailers, sporting good retailers, medical and dental providers, service providers. And the development is going to be a very attractive development and certainly much improved over what's out there right now. And this is the picture of what is on the ground now. And as you can see, we're talking about an overgrown parking lot and a concrete pad that's left over from the removal of a 550,000 square foot industrial building. We're going to replace that, and I'll give you some renderings of what they're thinking about. This first rendering is a picture or a rendering of the grocery parcel, or the grocery tenant. There's a couple of those. And then the rest of them really are the mixed-use development, the life center, if you will, giving you an idea of what they're proposing to do. As far as density is concerned, we've worked hard with the planning department, and I'll say right now, the planning department has worked really hard with us trying to protect the residents, the citizens, and to lessen the impact of the development. We've been working with it for about a year. But what we've agreed with the planning department is we're going to develop this project at about a third the rate that would ordinarily be allowed under the UDO. And of course, by reducing the size of the development and limiting the development, we reduce its impact, including the impact on traffic. And we also increase the green space. And this overlay here, this slide here, is the proposed green space overlay. And when I looked at that, the thing that struck me most about this slide is the amount of green space in the proposed development as compared to the green space to the development to the south. The next slide is our landscape plan. Of course, the project will be very well landscaped. The landscape plan currently calls for about 1,000 small and large trees and about 3,000 3-gallon shrubs. And we're talking about just the perimeter of the property. We're not talking about the additional plantings that are going to be planned or required for the internal parcels as they're developed and the project progresses. The developer will also be putting in a 10-foot wide paved walking and biking trail to provide interconnectivity between the parcels for the residents and their guests. As I mentioned before, the park parcel, the developers are willing to convey this property or give the property to the city as a benefit and to add to the trails, the rails to trails. And as part of that, they will develop the park parcel for use of the public. They'll put in a dog park, a parking lot, and they'll also provide convenient access to the rails to trails as well as to the development. And although Midland Commons, we believe, will have substantial benefits to the community, we're certainly cognizant of the fact that it will have impact and that there are concerns with the development, and that's something the developer has been willing to address and to mitigate. They've accepted all of just for your information, they've accepted all of the conditions that the planning department has proposed. But the overriding concern, as you all know, is going to be traffic. And our traffic engineer, Abdul, is here with us to talk more about that, but he's worked hard with the planning department, and again, it's been tireless how they've worked on this. But they've come up with a number of traffic improvements to help mitigate the impact to the transportation network. As the staff report indicated, this developer has done numerous traffic studies. The studies have provided traffic information to the city that extends well beyond the boundaries of the development and well beyond the boundaries impact. But what these traffic studies have done is have identified for us those traffic improvements that can be made so that this development won't materially adversely affect the transportation network. And these studies conclude that with the proposed improvements, the delay times, that's what we talk about, delay times, That's the time you actually sit in your car. At several of those intersections, they're going to be substantially improved over what they are today. Also, the developer, to further lessen the impact of this development, has agreed to in place all of these traffic improvements up front, rather than what you would normally see, and that would be for them to be phased in as the development progresses. And this is important because those improvements are designed assuming full build-out. So what this means to the public is that the public's going to get disproportionate benefit on the front end for many years from the traffic improvements until the development is completed. And again, Abdu's going to talk more about the traffic improvements later. The property is serviced by all public facilities and infrastructure. There'll be no negative impact to those facilities and infrastructure. From an economic impact, of course, development will have a very positive economic impact on the city and its citizens, including creating hundreds of construction jobs during the several years of build-out process, together with a substantial increase in business for local suppliers, subcontractors, electricians, plumbers, others that support the construction industry. And then once the development is done, we'll have numerous permanent jobs created. Early estimates are that up to 750 permanent jobs will be created as a result of this development. Development will also have a substantial increase in the tax base for ad valorem tax purposes, thereby again providing economic return to the city without adversely affecting any existing infrastructure. We anticipate increasing ad valorem tax receipts from about $137,000 a year to well over $900,000 a year once the development is done. In addition, there'll be a substantial increase in sales tax receipts, both in connection with the purchase and sale of tens of millions of dollars of construction materials, and then permanently once the development is up and running. We anticipate generating millions of dollars in sales tax receipt once the development is done. And again, these sales tax receipts should go a long way toward helping the city fulfill or make up shortfalls that might be resulting from other revenue streams that they have. And the fact that this development is regional in its impact or its reach also means that many of those dollars will come from outside Columbus. In addition to the economic benefits, the development is going to have some other benefits. First and foremost, of course, would be convenient and close shopping for local and residents and regional residents. Also, given the developer's emphasis on local mom and pop businesses, local business owners and entrepreneurs will certainly be given an opportunity to participate and benefit and succeed with this development. As I mentioned before, this is a lifestyle center where people will live, work, and play in the same area. People will be able to walk or bike or wherever they want to go. And as I've been reading about these lifestyle centers, it's good news for the retailers, and I think the retailers realize this, because what the studies show is that a consumer who walks up to a business spends about 60% more with that business than his counterpart who drives up in a car. And it struck me this was an odd win-win situation where you've got retailers who have increased sales, yet you have consumers that save money on transportation. And as the staff report indicated, on June 7th, we had a town hall meeting at Midland Middle School with the surrounding residents. We wanted to notify them of our plans, we wanted to listen to their concerns, and we wanted to address some of their concerns. And the primary concern is traffic, and we believe that our traffic improvements will address those concerns. We believe that our application and request for zoning meets all the requirements for rezoning. The PMUD classification is consistent and compatible with surrounding land uses as well as the comprehensive plan. All public facilities and infrastructure are located at the site. There'll be no negative impact to those facilities or infrastructure. We believe the traffic and road improvements that we propose will help mitigate any impact that this development will have on the transportation network. We believe this development will be of great benefit to the community in terms of job creation, tax revenue generation, convenient shopping, providing senior living, and also providing a much-desired high-quality live, work, play environment. We believe these benefits far outweigh any negative implications that this development might have. Keep in mind, folks, that this is an old Brownsville site. It's been vacant for over a decade, and my clients have the foresight, the fortitude, and the financial resources to redevelop this property and to turn it into something we can all be proud of. Therefore, I respect that you approve our application and you recommend approval to council. Nick and Abdul are going to get up and speak, and after they speak, we'd be more than happy to try to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
I want to make this sort of a blanket announcement across the board. In the essence of time, for anyone who's going to come forward and speak going forward, please make sure what we're hearing is something we haven't heard yet, rather than a repeat of what we've already heard. This is televised, and we've got to be cognizant of the time of the folks here and in the audience. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Good morning. My name is Nick Sacco with Mass Engineering. I'm going to describe to you real quickly the improvements for the on-site roadway improvements for this project. In green, you'll see the extension of of Tolokas Lane. To the left is where the existing Walmart currently is. Tolokas Lane ties back to Gateway Road in front of the Walmart. So what we're proposing to do is take the Tolokas Lane outlined here in green, extend it from the south to the first roundabout, then across to the second roundabout, then to the main drive to the site that's currently signalized across from Flat Rock Road. That roadway will be dedicated to the city. It will have full infrastructure in terms of drainage, water, sewer, so all public infrastructure will be in it. The purpose of extending Tolokas Lane is to allow drivers to avoid the intersection of Gateway Road and J. Round Parkway. So if there is stress, if there is backup, that they could use as a cut through from J. Round Parkway, across the Walmart and then back to Gateway Road. But it will be a public roadway. In addition, there'll be 2 right-in, right-outs off of that public road that do tie into J. Round Parkway. And
Thank
with,
you. And Mr. Mize, we've got someone else that you said wanted to come forward? The traffic engineer? Okay.
Good morning. My name is Abdul Amir. I'm a traffic engineer with A&R Engineering, located in Marietta, and I've conducted a detailed traffic impact study for the project. It's actually called the Development of Regional Impact, went through that process as well. We studied a large area, including 15 intersections around the site, and the study was submitted and reviewed by Georgia DOT, city's consultant, city staff, and we have had numerous meetings, provided additional information requested by city staff and consultant to do additional analysis and evaluations. And the conclusion of all of those meetings and effort and studies was to identify several improvements that could be put in place as part of this development as a way to mitigate the impacts from the traffic. Everybody knows the traffic situation in this area. It is heavy, and so we wanted to work hard and identify. And I'll take a minute on this next slide. How do I get the next slide up? Thank you. To just go specifically over some of these improvements. I know it's kind of small. I'm not sure if you have those on your screens.
We did get it.
Okay, thank you.
We do have it, yes, thank you.
So the main entrance to the project is on J. Allen Parkway across from Flat Rock Road North, and we are proposing several improvements there. I'm going to talk a little bit about project entrance first. We're proposing 4 exiting lanes and 2 entering lanes. So that'll be a 6-lane entranceway or roadway, if you will. Out of the 4 exiting lanes, we will have 2 left turn lanes, and then we will have a through lane and a right turn lane. And then on the entering side, to turn left from J. Allen Parkway into the side, there will be 2 left turn lanes. Currently, there's only 1, so we'll be widening into the median to provide dual left turn lanes. Therefore, we have 2 receiving lanes for those dual lefts going into the side. Across from those dual left turn entering lanes, there will be 1 left turn lane to turn left from J. Allen Parkway onto Flat Rock Road, but we will be shifting the location of that left turn lane to improve the side distance and safety. That was one of the comments from Georgia DOT, and that is one of the mitigation improvements I believe developers agreed to do. And then on the Flat Rock Road side, we will have 3 lanes, total exiting and then entering lanes. There will be dual left turn lanes coming out of Flat Rock Road installed, and then a shared through and a right turn lane. In total, that is 17 lanes at that intersection. I believe we have thrown everything we could possibly throw at it. And the net result of that is that we will have an average delay per vehicle at that intersection after this whole project is built and its traffic is added, a situation which will be better than what you have today. So there will be a net decrease in average delay there with all these improvements. In addition to this main entrance, there are 3 other entrances on J.R. Allen Parkway. All of those 3 will be right in, right out movements where no left turns in or left turns out will be allowed. That is usually the safest access you can have. So all the other 3 accesses are limited to those right in, right out. We will be providing a long deceleration lane for traffic to get out of the through lane, slow down, and then turn right into the entrance. And the exiting traffic will obviously have to yield to the through traffic on J. Allen Parkway. The other connection to Telecos Lane that Nick just mentioned, where it comes and ties into Gateway Road, we have identified some improvements there as well, which are included as part of the mitigation improvements the developer, I believe, has agreed to. There is currently there are 2 exiting lanes, and we're separating the right turn and left turn movement and proposing certain signal phasing improvements that'll improve the overall operations there substantially as well. In addition to these specific movements I talked about, we have looked at larger area and identified several other system improvements that can be put in place long-term. Obviously would involve some bridges and Georgia DOT, and my understanding is they're also conducting a corridor study and taking into account some of our recommendations. So we have shed some light into system improvements as part of this study as well. With that, in the interest of time, I'll be happy to answer any questions you all have at appropriate time.
Yeah. Commissioners, are there any questions for Mr. Mize or any of the other presenters that came forward at the time? Mr. Dudley?
I'd like to ask staff a couple of questions based on what the applicant's representative said. First, the applicant's representative said that they had met all of the conditions that staff had imposed. Is that accurate?
It is.
Okay, thank you. And second, it's encouraging to hear applicants state that after the traffic improvements, the average delays will actually decline. Is that staff's understanding as well?
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reese?
I have a few questions. If we could take this map back, if I can get the traffic engineer to come back up for me, please. Yes, this map here. So you stated the main entry would be across from Flat Rock Road, right there where the McDonald's is located?
Correct.
If I'm not mistaken, that's where the limited access begins for J.R. Allen Parkway. So how would that impact driveway number 1? Are you allowed to have a right in, right out of a limited access area?
So far, our discussions with Georgia DOT, our understanding is they are willing to give us that right in, right out driveway as long as we follow their standard procedures about demonstrating side distance, visibility, and those kinds of things. But my understanding is that is acceptable to Georgia DOT.
Okay. Well, I know it's a little out of the scope of what we're here to discuss today, but one thing about J.R. Allen, since we're talking about traffic, is that's where you begin to see the backup right as you're coming across that bridge in that curve, because you're coming to the first red light. So that first driveway, just take a closer look, make sure it's not going to have any impact on traffic backing up further because of people trying to merge on right there. Once we get to the light, I have no concerns about anything. After that, it's just driveway number 1. My second thing is you stated that the park area would be donated to the city. Have we had that conversation with the city yet? Because I know other entities inquired about donating park space, and because of the current budget situation, the city said it couldn't financially handle it. So if that's the case, are the developers willing to maintain it privately but still for public usage?
My name is Chris Whiteman, 1712 Park Drive, and with the development group. And yes, we have had conversations with the city and the council of the district in relationship to donating this. And our conversation with Ms. Brewer, Holly Brewer, is that they would accept the park. And we're not going to have any facilities out there to maintain at this point in time. The majority of the maintenance would be cutting the grass and making sure that the gates are locked. Right now, with Flat Rock Park, they currently hire a sheriff's deputy to go over there and open the gate in the morning and lock the gate in the evening, and it would fall under the same scenario as that.
Okay. And then my final thing was, I think this is all exciting, and it will certainly be an improvement for that area up there. So kudos for that. Do we have a commitment from the developers to try to hire locally as much as possible, a public commitment for the construction jobs and things of that nature, so that citizens can benefit from the very beginning locally?
Yes, my partner, Marty Flournoy and Jack Wright, are very committed to helping the proverbial mom and pop businesses, and we're big proponents of of using local employers or, local contractors whenever possible. There are going to be some situations when we're dealing with national tenants that it will not be possible to hire local contractors. They will have their preferred developers or their preferred contractors, and they're going to have to go through that system. So hopefully we will encourage those contractors who we will ultimately be employing to use local subs whenever possible.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Mr. Greenblatt?
Yes, and this is for staff. Blackman Road and Schaumburg Road, the traffic backs up there late in the afternoon and also early in the morning, people trying to get out. And I guess my concern or my question is that with the addition of these lanes and another light, have we compensated? I know this has nothing to do with this development, but have we looked at that from a traffic scenario also?
They actually went back that far in the traffic study.
Back to that location that far is what you mean?
Right, because, you know, a lot of times when you come around that corner coming up to Schaumburg Road, traffic is backed up onto J.R. Allen.
Right,
and
yes, sir.
There's been some pretty critical accidents there over the few years, so I was concerned.
Thank you. Mr. Brandt, are you?
Yes, please. Actually, I have a question for Mr. Jones. A couple of years ago, or maybe last year, you presented to us one of the projects that y'all were working on, which was a traffic software for this specific area, and I was just curious how that's come along. If I don't know where it was in the pipeline when you presented it to us.
Good morning, and Commissioner Brown, you're absolutely correct about that. You may recall we did talk about transportation projects, and one of them was how we were going to improve this corridor. Mm-hmm. This corridor is a nightmare. We're not going to sugarcoat it for anybody. It's a problem. At that time, we were working with, and still are working with, GDOT. They came in and said that they would come in and actually upgrade the system for us by providing us some additional hardware for those traffic control cabinets, so that they could actually talk to one another, or talk to the operators themselves and monitor that traffic. They also provide the software for that. What they can actually do now is they can monitor that traffic, and when they see an issue going on where it gets a little tight, they can actually synchronize those lights a little bit better. They can change them and so forth. That has improved. It's not to where I'd like for it to be, but it has improved in terms of overall quality for traffic out there in that area. Traffic is moving. I have complained because it really affects me more than it does anybody else in this room right now, because when that traffic is moving so freely in both directions going east and west on 80 there, I can't get out of my subdivision. But the good thing about it is that traffic is moving. We still have some bottlenecks or congestion areas at peak moments, particularly in the afternoons, but it is flowing better. The idea is to take that process there, though, and go community-wide with it. We've had some conversations I went with on the last conference call on that, but the idea is to take that, go a little bit further and make it go community-wide with it. And it's just a matter now, I say just a matter, but a matter of trying to find some additional funding to take care of the same situation we got in terms of upgrading the cabinets and some of the signals themselves from that aspect of it. That was all part of the conversation when we started this with developers. Was we made them aware that we were upgrading the signals out there, and they should collect that data as well and involved with it, so they could make sure they had an understanding. There are some things out there that just are beyond the developer's control. They're really more involved with the city and GDOT making that effort or anything else. As Mr. Renfro's already indicated to you as well, when we had to start out this conversation, we required their study to go at least as far as Blackman on J.R. Allen and all the way out to, I believe, was it Solomon?
Solomon.
One to the east side of it. And we went down as far down to where Gateway ties back into Miller and back up, of course, in that area, just to get a feel for what this potential project could do for us and so forth. And we've come back now to the idea of what we really feel like legally we can require the applicants to do here in terms of making sure that they don't make it any worse than what it is right now, particularly in their area. And that's what we're trying to shoot for, trying to achieve. I think we're there to a certain comfort level with that. But again, understand also that if this rezoning goes forward, they're going to have to make those improvements and put them in place prior to anything else going on that site. prior really for us actually issuing a certificate of occupancy for anything that's constructed out there. They understand that, we understand that, and that's the only really guarantees we've got in terms of making this thing happen. But Commissioner Branning, back to your original question, yes, we did make some improvements out there. We're still trying to make some improvements out there. It's not a good situation, but it's one we got to work through, one we got to try to address.
Well, and I think the point that you just reemphasized is we probably can't repeat it enough, especially for our citizens, about the fact that what's happening here today, if this is approved, these applicants have to comply with this in order to be able to move forward with the development, which is a good check and balance that's been put in place.
And let me emphasize one other thing to you as well, while I have the podium here. GDOT was a partner. GDOT was at the meetings. They were either physically at the meetings or they were on the conference call with us to make sure they understand, because ultimately what's going to happen here is if the rezoning does go forward, the developer still has to make an application to GDOT for the necessary permits.
Sure.
And GDOT, because that is a state road, they control those. And so we want to make sure that they understood the situation, that we were both complimenting each other. We were both singing off the same sheet of music here to make this thing workable and doable. And I think we've accomplished that. But again, understand, and the developers do as well, that they still have to make application to GDOT for any necessary permits.
Thank you for that clarification and
Yes, ma'am.
reemphasizing that. Commissioners, are there any other questions for any of the parties with the applicant?
One last quick question.
Mr. Reese.
Looking at the entire parcel, there was that small area that was the SFR1. And so with the zoning request, I know that's not included here, but there's nothing, you didn't need to include it? Like, do you not want us to rezone the entire parcel?
No, there was two current zonings out there, and that was the SFR1 and the industrial zoning out there.
Yeah.
The SFR1 piece was a remnant piece that the DOT used to own that was in turn just deeded over to Swift Textile Mills. I think it was probably after the time that Swift had already gone in there and rezoned their property and established their development. From my understanding, GDOT quitclaim deeded the remainder of that property over there to Swift at the time, and Swift just never bothered to rezone it.
So the developers are going to be okay with still having two zoning?
No, sir, the rezoning is for the entire.
Right. They want to put both of those sections under one.
Okay, so this is for both sections?
Yes,
and not
sir.
just the section in red that was presented?
Right.
Okay.
SFR 3.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners, for any of the applicants? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and speak in favor of this request? And I see no one. If there is anyone who would like to come forward and speak against, and if you'll please state your name and address. And actually make sure you're speaking into the mic, please.
Hey, good morning. Andrew Closter, 7232 Rentwood Drive. And Mr. Renfro, you and I did exchange emails on this.
You're going to, what?
We did exchange emails.
Oh.
I'm not actually for or against. I commend the developers, but I'm affected like Mr. Jones is with the traffic out there. And I see the limited scope that they've looked at Flat Rock Road on the north side by the McDonald's, and I commend them on the turning lanes, but that doesn't do anything with the curve past that and where the bad traffic backup is, and also where the water piles up on the road there. And also Kitten Lake, everybody here knows that is an absolute nightmare. If you add this traffic to it, what are we going to do with the Kitten Lake area? It just doesn't make sense. It's just like Blackman Road got rezoned. I've got photographs right now of the kids walking in the grass because there's no sidewalk. You've got apartments, you've got a school. You don't have any safety for the citizens that you're moving there. And out there on Warm Springs Road, there's not even a shoulder. People using the park or walking on the road trying to get to it. The city is responsible for the safety of the citizens, and we've got to make sure those things are taken care of. So I commend them with wanting to do the traffic, but it has to be done right. Like they said on entrance number 1, you're coming around that corner across the bridge. People are already doing 70 and that 45 going to that red light. They can't merge there. That has to be its own lane if they have that. I mean, we just got to bring common sense to it. You're going to have more deadly accidents. I drive over 100 miles a day in this city. I maintain a warehouse on 13th downtown, an office on Hamilton Road, and I contract for TSYS, for Pratt & Whitney, and I ride my bicycle over 50 miles a week on the streets here. I see the state of our roads. I see our budget problems. We talked about Parks and Rec taking that over. I spoke with Ms. Browder and Mr. Tommy Gross. They have 3 lawnmowers for 47 properties right now. They've got a decimated Parks and Rec budget. So we've got to have some common sense approach to this financially and for the safety of the citizens.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak against this proposal? All right, I see no one. Commissioners, are there any other questions? Do I hear a motion? Mr. Reese.
As it relates to matter REZN 05180957, a request to rezone 88.82 acres of land located at 6-801 Flat Rock Road, currently zoned light manufacturing, proposed zone planned mixed-use development. Considering that the staff has indicated that there are no concerns and everything's in compliance, I move that we approve the request for rezoning.
And do I hear a second? Mr. Greenblatt. All of those in favor, please raise your right hand. Make sure I'm seeing everybody. It is unanimous, so we will submit this as
Just want to make sure,
approved.
excuse me, that Teddy's motion includes not only the LMI property, but the SFR3 property.
Is that not what he said?
No,
Yes, as was said, as proposed, so it would be what was officially
Okay, so
submitted.
both parcels, the
Yes.
LMI and the SFR3?
Yes.
Oh,
We're good.
SFR. Thank you very much.
Thank
No
you for the,
problem.
so that, it has been approved, so it will be submitted as approved, and I thank you for that. Thank you for the detailed information. That moves us on to our next case, which is REZN-06-18-1135. This is a request for a text amendment to amend the text of the Unified Development Ordinance, the UDO, in regards to Section 7.8.1F and 7.9.3A residential subdivision entrances. Mr. Renfro, is there anything that is Mr. Johnson coming forward? Okay.
If y'all recollect here, not too long ago, you approved a variance process dealing with streets, how they stub out. We had a situation in, what's your subdivision?
Whitesville Walk.
Whitesville Walk, where a street was stubbed out and they needed to, there was one extra lot there. There were concerns about public safety, getting a truck in there and whatnot. So you all approved a 4-step variance process that goes through staff and eventually ends up at council. This is a very similar, it's almost verbatim, the exact same language. We have in the UDO a section that requires a second entrance if you have over 99 lots or 99 apartment units or condo units for public safety reasons. Situations have come up where people have not, or developers have not been able to fully utilize the extra access. And so it has been requested that another variance process be created for folks who cannot get the second access if they have over 99 lots or units.
Commissioners, questions for Mr. Johnson? Mr. Kenner.
Yeah, you said there were cases where the developers had not been able to utilize the second access. What do you mean by that?
They can't get a second access. They have limited road frontage
There's
and
not
they
enough space.
don't have another way out. So there's nowhere to actually put another access if they have over 99 lots. One way in, one way out.
Yeah. And it could be that that subdivision entrance abuts a personal property or
It abuts somebody else's
Something, a
property,
business,
or you're on a state road and you don't have
ditch.
enough road frontage to have a second access because of distance requirements. So this is a variance process to allow them to file a variance and, if approved, exceed the 99 lots or units.
Any other questions? Do you have a question? Mr. Dudley?
Well, just sort of a concern, isn't it the case that the reason for the 99 limit is that it's a bad idea to have in general to have more than that many lots with only one way in, one way out?
Well, I mean, that's been our standard practice, is to have that second requirement. The variance process does go through public safety, which is the fire department and the police department, the engineering department, and the planning department. So it just gives the developer an opportunity to seek a variance.
I was going to say, this is really what this text amendment is giving the developer permission to come forward to ask for permission, correct?
To ask council for
Yeah.
permission.
Are you coming here today because you're trying to set this up for a future situation, or is this in response to previous concerns that have been voiced to you?
This has come from the city attorney's office. I'm sure that there must be a situation out there. So we're bringing it forward.
As requested.
As requested. I'm not aware of, we don't have a lot of single-family development going on right now, so, or multifamily, so I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Gotcha. Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Johnson? Mr. Reese?
With the proposed plan, and we talked about the 4 steps, but just for the public's perspective, for those who may have missed that meeting, can you just, again, go through the 4 steps that would be required? Because you said that language would be pretty much parallel to this, right?
Yes, and the reason that it's in a separate, hindsight, it probably should have just been for the whole chapter, but it was put in a particular section, so it only applies to that particular section. So now we're coming back and adding it to another section in the same chapter.
Even though hindsight is telling you it should be for the entire chapter.
Yes. Don't shoot the messenger. But what this does is it says a variance shall be issued only when there is, 1, a finding that the property configuration prohibits or makes impracticable the installation of more than one entrance. 2, a determination that failure to grant the variance would result in exceptional hardship. 3, a finding that council has received and reviewed the recommendation of the Department of Engineering, Planning, Public Works, CPD, and Fire EMS. And a determination by council that the granting of a variance will not interfere with the provision of city services along the impacted streets, inhibit the access of public safety vehicles into the affected area, result in extraordinary public expense, or otherwise threaten the safety of the public.
So that process would skip this board here? It would not?
Yes.
Skip boards.
Yes. It goes to council.
Goes to council.
Any other questions for Mr. Johnson? Do I hear a motion? Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this text amendment request? Anyone who would like to speak against it? Seeing none, do I hear a motion? Mr. Kenner.
This motion is in relation to REZN 06-18-1135 text amendment to change the UDO. I recommend it be approved as submitted.
And do I hear a second? Mr. Brandon? All of those in favor, please raise your right hand. It is unanimous for approval, so we will submit this as approved. Thank you. And that brings us to our last case, which is a special exception. It is EXCP-05-18-0955. This is a request to rezone 0.96 acres of land located at 2900 4th Avenue. The current zoning is LMI, Light Manufacturing Industrial. The proposed use is auto sales. Is used auto sales, excuse me. The used auto sales under 2.0 acres requires a special exception. Dennis Deal is the applicant, and this property is located in Council District 8, Garrett. Mr. Renfro.
Yes, ma'am. Access is or will the type of street providing access to the use be adequate to serve the proposed special exception use? 4th Avenue and 29th Street are local roads. They will provide adequate free flow movement for all traffic. This use will be the primary use for 2900 4th Avenue. Traffic and pedestrian safety is or will access into and out of the property be adequate to provide for traffic and pedestrian safety, the anticipated volume of the traffic flow, and access by emergency vehicles. Access into and out of the property in question will provide for adequate traffic and pedestrian safety. Emergency vehicles will have adequate access to the principal structure and accessory use. Adequacy of public facilities. Are or will public facilities such as school, water, or sewer utilities, and police and fire protection be adequate to serve the special exception use? Services such as water, sewer utilities, police, and fire protection will be adequate and serve the proposed use at this location. Protection from adverse effects. Are or will refuge, service, parking, and loading areas on the property be located or screened to protect other properties in the area from such adverse effects as noise, light, glare, or odor? The properties are surrounded by other LMI, light manufacturing, industrial uses. Parking services and refuge should be adequate and provided as stated within the UDO. Noise, light, glare, odor should be limited due to the nature of the location. Hours of operation. Will the hours of the manner of operation of special exception use have no adverse effects on the properties in the area? The hours of operation for this use will not have an adverse effect on the neighboring properties in this area. Compatibility. Will the height, size, or location of the building or other structures on the property be compatible with the height, size, character, or locations of buildings or other structures on neighboring properties? This structure, height, size, and location should match the uses found on LMI properties. Council District F, Garrett, 46 property owners within 300 feet of the property have been notified of the proposed special exception. The planning department has received 2 complaints and no additional information.
All right, and can you, as you know, the question is going to be, what were the complaints?
One was for eyesore, and then the other one was just for the location of across the street, the park area.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Any questions, commissioners, for Mr. Renfro regarding the staff report? And do we have the applicant here with us to come forward? If you'll please come forward and state your name and address, and if there's any additional information you want to share with us.
My name is Dennis Deal. I currently own the property at 2900 4th Avenue. Basically, it's used for a warehouse right now, and I'm wanting to sell used cars down there.
Gotcha. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Mr. Bollinger.
What do you propose to do as far as the current existing building? I mean, are you going to tear it down, or are you going to?
I'm pretty much going to do most of this on the internet, to be honest with you. It's not like a full-time situation to me. I have other business interests, and I just want to sell some cars and be legal about it. But I mean, the building's staying the same. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with the area, but that's a pretty dismal area down there as it is, and which I own a lot of rental property down there, and I'm down that way a lot. But I basically got 2 offices inside. It's mostly warehouse, and I'm going to have to keep a majority of the cars in the warehouse due to security reasons.
Okay, so you don't propose doing a lot of construction or
Oh, no construction whatsoever will be done. The building right now is probably about a 13,000 square foot metal building is what it is.
I'm familiar.
In most of the area, 85% of it's fenced in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right on the corner of 29th and 4th Avenue.
Right, I'm familiar. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners, for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this request? And if so, please come forward. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak against this request? If you'll please come forward, and if you'll have a seat. If you'll please come forward, state your name and address.
My name is Max Helms, and I own the property across the street from where Deal is putting his business. And my biggest concern is this is going to wind up being a storage area for non-operable vehicles. The place has always had different type of paraphernalia and building construction material piled up in the backyard around that have a terrible eyesore. The warehouse is covering about 65 to 70% of the entire property. He has nowhere to put cars to sell. The back will be he had to carry customers into the backyard in order to sell a car. There's no street room to put cars for sale. So my biggest concern is the mayor has been working in that area, trying to clean it up and down Second Avenue and coming 2 blocks and 3 blocks over into our areas. And I think it's going to create an eyesore and a hazard there. It's just my opinion. And
Well, thank you.
I run a body shop right across the street, and I've been there since 1976, so.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there any, Mr. Davis?
Has that business been in that condition for as long as you've lived there, or it has gotten worse as you live there?
That was Joe Hooten Automotive, that they rebuilt starters and generators in that building from, I'm going to say, the 60s all the way through the late 80s and 90s. He went out of business, and the building went up for sale, and it sat there for a long time empty, and it began to deteriorate. Mr. Deal bought it, and he used it for a warehouse to store granite and cabinetry things in it. And but then another building, a metal building that was never assembled, was put in the backyard right out my front door, and it's been there for 5 years, piled up, and now they're out there shuffling it around, big hunks of metal everywhere. And there's been these big containers to put debris in. There's been one of those out there for a year or two, with stuff piled around it. The trees and the weeds are growing around the fence all everywhere. And I'm just concerned it's going to be a place for unoperable vehicles. That's what's going to happen.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions for this person? Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to come forward and speak against this request? And if you will do us a favor and state your name and address as well.
Good morning. My name is Alice T. Davis at 2921 Fifth Avenue. And I've been here, and I bought my home when I moved here from Chicago. And I raised all my children there at 2921 Fifth Avenue. I worked at Open Door. I was on the board with Sanford Bishop and all of them, and I was a chef till I had 2 strokes. And I had 2, but I got the third generation of kids. But the people right next door to me, my house is old, but I bought it, and I done renewed it. I done put panels on the outside and on the inside. And all us neighbors was very good. We were looked after each other. I was the only black neighbor at that time. Then another family moved in a house right on 29th Street coming up Fifth Avenue. I'm looking right at 29th Street Park. I used to be on the board at that too. And so all us were friends and neighbors. But the older ones, they passed on. And but one other person on that block on 29th Street and Fifth Avenue, and her name is Dorothy. She worked at the Mills. She a white lady. She don't sleep at her house. I think she sleep with her son at her son's house in Phoenix City, Alabama.
Well, ma'am, what is your concern with?
My concern is my house, I bought it, and the fence was already put around it. I did not even know the posts had concrete on it. But the peoples that done bought the 3 lots above of me, they done fill it up and build it up higher, and they taking up the railroad tracks, and they done spread it, the railroad track, all of my back part of my land is done washed down, and right up under my step, and now the brick, the pillar in my porch there is being washed up. When it rained, the water come over like it's jumping over the dam. They done tow it all down. I done called the city people. They came out there, and they built a little wall around, and then they filled it in with dirt. But now it's all done washed out and washed all and killed all of my flowers on the side of my house.
I want to ask you a quick question with all due respect.
Mm-hmm.
The property that Mr. Deal owns, does your property touch his property at all? Are you next to his property across?
All us, what was there, from.
I need you to get on the microphone for me.
Oh, excuse me.
That's
I'm
okay,
sorry.
that's okay, I
don't
know.
look good either now.
Okay, but does your?
Yeah. But what it did, they didn't keep the line right into the line what was been there all the years before they got there. They put their fence right up against my fence. Our fences always had a waterway, all three houses, our water run on the railroad track into Fifth Avenue Street. But now it come all the way down in my yard, front and back.
Okay, I'm going to stop you for just a second because I think you might be coming before the wrong people about what your issue is. I don't have a computer up, guys. Does anybody have, can you tell me, does her property?
Oh, I have a paper here.
No, hang on. Okay. Okay. So what I'm looking at is a map of your house and this
Right.
gentleman's property, and they
Right.
don't touch. You are not next to or on his property.
No.
So what I'm going to suggest for you is if you'll do me a favor and have a seat, and when the meeting is over, I'm going to have myself and Mr. Renfro or Mr. Jones or somebody, we're going to come talk to you about the next process for you, because what we're talking about right now has nothing to do, it won't affect you. So do me a favor and have a seat.
Okay, thank you.
And then I'm going to see you in just a minute. Is that okay?
That's fine.
I'll have somebody with the city with me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes, sir. Come on up front.
The one problem that he's complaining about is there's some abandoned railroad tracks back here, and I've been dealing with the city for about 2 months about it, and getting this, that. These bushes are probably, 20 feet tall. It's abandoned railroad tracks, and it has just like pushed my fence over into my property is what it's been.
Okay.
And it's going to be a pretty expensive thing to fix it, and I don't think that's my responsibility to fix.
Well, and not to be funny, but that's got nothing to do with zoning. So
No, I'm just saying that's a lot of the ugliness.
I got you. So what I want to get us circled back to what we're here for, and that is to either recommend for approval or denial the special exception for this property. So if you'll do me a favor and have a seat. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to come forward and speak against this special exception that has been brought before us? Hang on, I don't see anybody. Okay, so do I have?
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a
Mr.
question
King.
for Mr. Deal. Mr. Helms brought up a good point. Under LMI, and this is also for staff, under LMI, if we approve this special exception, all you can do is sell used cars out of there. Is that correct? They can't store cars for parts and junk it up and so forth. Now, who will actually enforce that?
Well, it's codes and,
I mean, under LMI, can he pretty much do whatever he wants to do?
Right, under LMI, he can use it for whatever use that's specified for LMI. The special exception just allows him to use sell the used auto in addition to that.
that's what I was just going to say. It's
Right.
in addition.
Okay, so actually, he could store old cars and use parts off the old
Yes,
cars.
he could.
Right now, he certainly can.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So he
This
can do
is
that
just,
but this just allows him to sell the cars.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
thank you for that clarification, Mr. King. Mr. Kenner.
Sir, you stated that you intended to keep most of the cars in the warehouse?
Yes, sir, most of them going to be in the warehouse. I respect his, concern. I mean, I'm a property owner.
I got to have you on, hang on.
Yeah.
I respect his concern, but I ain't no junk collector. Yeah, that metal building has been back there. I'm in the process of getting that cleaned up. There is a dumpster back there. I'll remove the dumpster because I've got, construction and I fill the dumpster up is what I do. I'll remove the dumpster. That ain't no problem.
Okay,
But, I painted the front of the building, and this metal building he's talking about, it is a little eyesore, and I'll do my best to try to do something with that.
Well, will you make a commitment to keep all the cars for sale in the warehouse?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. I'm just saying there's area outside. The warehouse ain't big enough to accommodate all these cars, but You know, my intent, I'm not gonna have like a full-blown car lot down there, you know, is not my intent. But I will be storing some cars outside. Right now, I cannot even have a car
Right.
down there under the rules and regulations that my license fall in.
Thank-
And I'm just trying to get legal about it where I can put cars outside.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners? All right, any discussion? If not, do I hear a motion? I need to hear a motion of some sort. Mr.
All right,
King.
I'll make a motion, and I'll try to do better this time. With the, for special exception, EXCP 05-180955, request to, let's see, am I looking at the right one? Yep. It says rezone .96 at 29, well, this is a special exception used for 2900 4th Avenue. Current zoning is LMI, proposed use is auto sales, and this is a special exception for auto sales. I make a motion that we approve this.
So do I hear a second for an approval of this special exception?
I have a question.
I do
don't
not.
have a second.
You don't want to make a second, but you have a question?
Yes.
Yes.
I guess my question is more for staff. Can you give me some history behind why we require 2 acres for used auto sales?
Space?
Required exception
Right.
for smaller than 2 acres.
Yes, so that means that you require 2 acres to have a used autos.
Yes, we do
Yes,
currently
so why
require.
do we require that? What's the
Because it's-
wisdom
yeah.
behind it?
When we did the UDO in, gosh, '02 to '05, through that whole process, one of the issues that came up with the committee that was reviewing it, which was made up of predominantly citizens, was pop-up used car sales. One of the most notorious was right there at the corner of Armour and Manchester, that tiny triangle where Chick-fil-A is now. There was just a tiny triangle out there in front of that old furniture company that just had cars packed in there right on the corner. So it was to avoid these little pop-up, 6-month-long little auto dealerships. So it required the 2 acre minimum, the 2 acre minimum. It also has additional standards dealing with buffering, the number of cars you can have percentage-wise on the lot, things of that nature. After it was in place, we had some of the existing used car owners come to us and say, 2 acres just is not doable within the urban core of Columbus. Do y'all mind having a special exception and backing it down to a half acre where if we meet all the requirements,
On a case-by-case basis.
case-by-case basis, they can come in and apply for special exception.
So that was their request, to get this special exception in place where it would even be allowed. I guess part of my challenge is, I don't think 2 acres was just magical,
No, 2 acres, it's not, and it's, but within the urban core of Columbus, it is almost impossible to find 2 acres to do a car dealership.
Okay, thank you.
So I did not have a second
I have
on the.
I have another question.
Okay, Mr. Dudley has a question.
How many special exceptions are there for used
Oh,
car
my
lots
gosh.
under 2 acres in the area? Do you have an idea? I mean, is this 5 or is it 50?
I'd say a lot of them that you all have seen were previous used car lots that were closed, lost their grandfather clause, and someone came in and wanted to reopen them. So there have been several that have come here, but I would say most of them have always historically been used car lots.
Right. And so we have another question.
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Bollinger, no apologies.
If we add this exception for auto sales, are there any special buffering or site buffering that would be required
You still have to meet all the additional standards.
for auto sales?
For auto sales.
As far as fences and those type things?
That's right.
So it throws this applicant into another, I guess, for lack of a better word, sense of responsibility.
Yeah, codes and inspections,
Right.
we'll review all of that.
All right, Commissioners, any other discussion or questions that you have regarding, we do have a motion on the table by Mr. King to approve this special exception. I did not hear a second. Mr. Brannon, okay, so Mr. Brannon is seconding the approval of this special exception. All of those in favor for approval of the special exception, please raise your right hand. And I have 2. All of those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 opposed. And this is where I get my verbiage. The last time we did this, I did not do this eloquently. So this exception is going forward to the planning department as not approved, correct?
Correct.
Correct. I want to make this a denial for a recommendation for denial. I just want to make sure that I say that properly. And that, we have no further cases here. I don't see that we have any new business. I do want to remind those watching and on television, those in the audience, we've got a little bit of a gap before our next meeting because we have the 4th of July holiday, which falls on a Wednesday, and we're not meeting then. So our next meeting is actually July the 20th, and that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting.